Hello again. So good afternoon to everyone and welcome to this PhD introduction evening. My name is Raul Vicente and I'm the program manager for the PhD studies here in the Institute of Computer Science at the University of Tartu. And today's session is all about you. It's all about all of the students who ever wonder what is a PhD about, who are thinking whether to join a PhD program. So this event is particularly for you, to give you the information, the elements of information for you to have the possibility to take an informed decision whether the PhD program, what are the advantages and disadvantages of engaging in PhD studies. To do so, we have planned this evening a series of talks and discussions that will inform you about these issues that you might be curious about related to PhD studies. In particular, we will start with the director of the Institute, Jaak Vilo, who will probably tell us a little bit about the numbers and implications of having a PhD from the job market and economical perspectives and some other important aspects. Then we will have a talk by myself in which the main idea is that I will introduce you to the PhD curriculum in our university. So how long it takes to do a PhD, what is the credits, the number of credits that you will have to pass to obtain a PhD, and perhaps more importantly, adding some personal point of view about the PhD studies in general. What are the advantages and the skills and the aptitudes that you can develop if you follow us or you join us into the PhD program here. And finally, we will have perhaps the most important people in today's discussion, who are other PhD students and supervisors that will tell you their perspectives about the PhD studies. So you please, what I will ask all of you is to be very participative, because at the end, as I said, this session is exactly for you to solve your questions, your curiosities about the PhD studies. And here you will have the chance to ask the most relevant people who are other PhD students and their supervisors about all these questions. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor, or the online equivalent of that, to our Institute Director, Jaak Vilo.
First, I unmute myself. Do you hear me? Raul, do you hear me?
Well.
Okay.
Well.
Yes. Welcome, everybody. So we, of course, wanted to have the physical meeting and snacks and drinks and everything, but unfortunately, you know the situation. Then we opted for the hybrid meeting. But for example, in my case, I hope to be there, but the situation is that my kid was ordered to be at home, so I also stay at home. So welcome everybody. I'm heading the Institute of Computer Science, indeed. So in that sense, I'm responsible for the curricula and everything. And my role is not so much to talk personal stories, perhaps, but I can add to that as well. I wanted to make very clear that PhD program as such is not just another degree, that you take 4 more years and you read more books, you get smarter, and that's that. No, PhD is a very different type of degree. PhD is something where you would really put yourself on test somehow. You would actually really take time to deep dive into some problems. So the goal of the science, as you know, is to discover some new things. We are not discovering natural phenomena usually, unless you deal with the health data or biological data, but we also engineer things. So for example, you can develop new technologies, something that you know that will take years to develop. So that's a very good starting point for a PhD, something that is going to be needed, and nobody knows answers yet. So PhD is really putting yourself on test, and with a goal to obtain new knowledge by research and developing the technologies. So as such, because part of the job is really to develop new technologies, you have to consider that as a full-time job, pretty much. It's not something that you will read books in the evening and then after the work you become doctor of philosophy in computer science. So we consider PhD really to be a full-time job, and for that reason, of course, we also seek to compensate PhD students with income. We probably will touch the income part later as well. But PhD student will be fully embedded within, normally fully embedded within research group. So your closest colleagues will be within your research group, and your supervisor is the closest mentor for you. Now, it used to be the situation that PhD was considered somehow as you would go for PhD if you wanted to become university staff member, if you wanted to work for academia only. Because indeed, for working at the university, for working at the academia, you would need the PhD degree. And even more than PhD degree, you would probably also need the postdoc and starting your own research. So that gives you your personal career in the academia. Because in the university you do two things. You do research, but you also teach. And for teaching jobs as well as the research jobs, the PhD is a must. So academia is one part of the options that you have after the PhD. As I said, it used to be many considered that this is the only option, but this is not true. So clearly, actually, the demand is there such that the companies would require people who develop technologies. You know that in Estonia, there are many startups that have reached to this unicorn level. That means that they are servicing global consumer markets. So in doing so, you need to build technologies that really scale up, are novel, can work at that global scale. So tech companies actually do need research capable people, those who can develop new technologies and go into the unknown territories. And the same with the government jobs, because government, you know that different governments also need to develop technologies or choose technologies, and there are governmental jobs as well, where very good tech knowledge is needed. But then the third arm is that you're given this time to work with your supervisor, with your research team, and it is very likely that you will be able to develop something that might have value on its own right. So the third option will be that you could start thinking that maybe this is a good time to develop something that you can make into your own company 4 or 5 years from now. This is not a straightforward path. It has not been, again, yet prominent, but it's on the increase, this kind of opportunity as well. Just a bit of information that also University of Tartu is starting the sort of like spin-out ventures and opportunities to establish spin-outs better. So for the time of the university, you can develop technology, intellectual property that could be brought into the company that you are able to found a few years from now. So if in the past it was that PhD was demanded only for academia, then you know how fast the professors need to be replaced, how many PhDs there would have to be. The numbers are not that big. But now that you add to that these jobs at the companies, in the government, or your startup ideas, then I would almost say that ideally about 1/3 of the graduates of the PhDs would work in the academia after graduations. So all the other jobs will be also demanding PhDs. So this has been the reasoning why we have also started to scale up the PhD programs, to invite more people into the PhD programs, because we genuinely believe that there is so much more demand than just the university jobs as it used to be a few years back. Our traditional intakes have been now in the order of magnitude 15 to 20 starting positions every year. But I hope that we can raise it to 25, 30 in a few years' time. What does it mean? How can we raise the intake numbers? By having more candidates like yourselves in here, and having more supervisors capable and interested of supervising PhDs. So it's actually like a matchmaking, that there has to be supervising power, and there have to be good students and joint projects. So it's a really trilateral aspect, that you have to have good people, two good people, and a good topic. So this is the brief background, and I think that Raul is probably going to cover some of these aspects, how university does the intake. So the key part there is that before starting the PhD, really the topic is going to be, a research project is going to be developed, usually by the supervisors proposing something, but ideally it will be done jointly with the student candidates. So for the student candidates interested in certain areas, the best strategy is to really make sure that you know the potential supervisors, research groups, you engage in discussions with them, which topics will be good for you, which topics you would be interested to do, etc. So then these good topics can be proposed. It's not that supervisors think of something and then you come and say, oh, there wasn't anything interesting for me. Had you gone speaking to them, to the same people, maybe you could have figured out it yourself. So that's why this socializing aspect is very important for preparing for the PhD. But as I said, PhD is not just another degree. It's really commitment that is multi-year commitment. The nominal time is 4 years. Some people have managed to do it in 3 or less, but the traditional timing is a little bit more than 4. So because you need to get publications, etc. But the core is really on what you have developed yourself. Some discovered new technologies, shown that it is working, etc. Okay, so what else I can add in here? Yes, I did not mention about the income part. So as I said, I would consider PhD as a very important, not just a degree, but actually like full-time job. And our institute has committed several years back that we will ensure that the PhD students' intakes, the incomes would be at least 1,200 euros per month net. For that, there is a combination of scholarships and salary schemes. Government is going to be also adding more funding to the PhD programs. So some of those will change a little bit of the landscape of how the students are compensated, either as salary or scholarships. But 1,200 is the starting point, and it really depends on the research groups, projects, external funding situation. So it's not that it will be capped at 1,200. This is definitely not the case. But this is the minimum insurance that you would get. In many cases, the minimum insurance that you agree with the supervisor will be several hundreds euros more per month. So yes, we are not going to overcompensate compared to the job market, but at least you would be earning enough so that you can support your life very differently compared to the bachelor or master program. Okay. There is Ilma Ruduste is already asking about the junior research fellow. Yes, the rules are changing, so there will be. I don't know if it's already written in the law, everything from the next year, but yes, the idea is that every PhD student will be also employer and employed as junior researcher at the university. This is the goal, yes. But I would like to stop in here. We have the program, and I will be monitoring the the chat and the evening, and I can be answering, of course, many more questions as we go. So thank you very much for joining. I see that we have how many participants we have? Over 60. But as said, there are many supervisor candidates and many student candidates and some PhD students as well. So I would like to hand it back to Raul, and please take the next steps.
Thank you, Jaak, for this introduction to what it's a PhD about. And I think that we have a little bit of time for some brief questions also. There were some in the chat that Jaak already answered. I saw also some hands raised. So as I said, don't be shy. This information session is for you. So if there is any question, we can address them now. If not, still you can put your questions in the chat at any time. I think there is an so we can write them in the chat at any time. And if there are no further questions at this point in time, then I will proceed to give my presentation about the PhD curricula in our institute, and together with some personal point of view. So I hope you are seeing now in the screen some slides with the title into the PhD program. And as I said, the main idea of this short presentation that I'm going to give is to tell you a little bit about the PhD curriculum. And how many years it takes to finish a PhD, how many credits you should pass to obtain the PhD degree, what are the different courses that you will have to pass to obtain the PhD, and more importantly, as I said at the end, some personal view perhaps about other aspects that you can grow during these 4 years of PhD time, that if you are clever, if you are successful, and if you are determined, you can grow in many skills, even perhaps more important than simply becoming a specialist. Huh? So maybe let's start by the fact that in general, as Jaak mentioned, yes, the nominal time should be around 4 years. And that means that in principle, for those of you who will start the PhD program in next September 2021, you could be graduating already by June 2025. It's true what Jaak said, that typically it takes to last a bit more because you have to do research, you have to develop new technologies, and that also you have to publish many cases, and that means that the exact time is a bit variable. But in principle, around 4 years is a time in which it's possible to graduate with a PhD. That means that for those of you starting next September, you could be graduating already by 2025. And the overview of the talk will be first to tell you a little bit about the PhD curriculum, and then, as I said, about the personal view on the PhD studies from my side. And finally, I will remind you about some important dates for this application process from both the supervisor and the student point of view in order to be able to join the PhD program from next year. So let's start by the beginning, by the PhD curriculum. The PhD curriculum consists of 240 credits. And as you can see here in this slide, it's divided between 60 credits to be earned by passing courses and 180 by research. And here you can see already the main difference, perhaps, of PhD studies compared to master or bachelor studies. Here, the focus or the most important thing is for you to develop as an independent researcher. And that's why most of the credits have to be passed on the research side, on you developing and becoming an independent thinker, an independent scientist, and publishing and becoming an independent researcher. But still, let's zoom in each of the 2 blocks, in the courses and in the research side. Let's start by the courses side, which amounts to, as I said, 60 credits. So in these 60 credits, courses that you will have to pass, it's divided first in what we call specialty subjects that consist of 36 credits. And out of these 36, the first module consists of PhD seminars that amount to 12 credits. The idea of PhD seminars, as you can see here in the list on the right side, there are seminars on many different specialties in computer science that we offer, from cryptography, from seminar in bioinformatics, from seminar in computational neuroscience, or seminar in natural language processing. So there are many different seminars associated to different specialties that we have expertise here in the institute. And you will have to pass, if you join the program, 12 credits of these PhD seminars. And the intention of this is that in the PhD seminars, typically, what you have to do as a student is to familiarize yourself with the journals related to your specialty. You will have most typically to present some articles, some very recent articles in your field of research. You will have to discuss and interpret these latest results and latest articles in your field of research. So in general, the idea is that you become familiar with the latest research in your field. And more importantly, that not only you absorb this knowledge, but you're also critical of this knowledge. And here is a key difference between PhD studies and masters and bachelors. In bachelor and masters, typically, you don't question the knowledge that you receive from the teacher, because this knowledge is well validated, is consolidated over many years. But in the PhD, many of the things that you will have to build on, many of the things that you will have to read are just made, are just published in the last months or in the last year. And still this has to solidify. Still you have to be critical how much of that you believe, how much the author is overselling, how much sense makes the argument that the author does. And these PhD seminars, the intention is for you to become a critical thinker, to criticize and be able to argument on the latest science in your field of specialization. So on this, as I said, you will have to pass 12 credits on these PhD seminars. And the second part of these specialty subjects is what we call a specialty elective matters, and consists of 24 credits. And here the idea is that the subjects that you see, these courses that you see on the right side, to give you the methods and the tools for you to apply into your particular research problem. And here we offer a long list of of especially elective courses that again range from different courses in data science, machine learning, cryptography, theoretical computer science, data science in general, many different aspects that you can use these subjects to become acquiring the methods and the tools to apply to your own field research. And this list is not static. This list is changing. Whenever we add new teachers, new personnel into the institute, they come and offer their own subjects. So this list is changing year by year and typically is increased. For example, next semester, Janaru will be offering also some course on natural intelligence, something that is not here in the list yet. So as I said, this list is dynamic and you should use it as a PhD student to become familiar with the tools and methods to develop the background in general that will make you effective in conducting your research. And we have 12 credits in another module called university-wide elective courses. And here the idea is that not only you should develop as a specialist, but you should also probably develop also some other skills around. And in particular, what it was called typically soft skills. Like at the end, you will need to communicate your science, your research, your new technology that you're developing. And for that, you will need to learn a bit how to write, how to give presentations. You will need to also learn skills about how to supervise other students, leadership and management. So all these soft skills or so-called soft skills are actually really important. And here you have an opportunity to develop with 12 credits on those areas that are actually as important as the ones that make you a specialist. No? So here you have on the right side, again, you have a list, an example of subjects that you can take from this university-wide elective. And as you see, they include didactic practice, communicating science, management, learning, teaching and supervision, philosophical disagreements, and so on. So I think that's also a very interesting list that you can develop if you join the PhD program. And finally, we have 12 credits for what is called optional subjects. And here is for you basically to select any choice that you want to complement these 12 credits to gain knowledge in any area of your interest. And here the idea is that you still learn a little bit about something, perhaps not directly related to your specialty, some other field or some interdisciplinary science. And you can use the opportunity of these 12 credits to enlarge your knowledge in topics perhaps not directly related to your specialty. But funny enough, what happens many times is that these optional courses or these other fields that look far away from your own are the ones that best bring you ideas and inspiration for your own field. You can draw many parallels sometimes between two disciplines that look in principle different, but in many cases, exporting or bridging tools and methods from a very different area is actually a very successful strategy. So for that, you also have these 12 credits to develop these optional subjects. And now if you zoom up here, then we have the 60 credits that you will have to pass over the 4 years or the time of your PhD studies from the course side. One question I typically receive from many students is about the distribution of courses. And this is very flexible. In principle, you can discuss with your supervisor about how to distribute, when to take credits along these 4 nominal years. I particularly recommend to take them more or less uniformly. or perhaps within the first 3 years, but it doesn't mean that you have to pass these 60 credits from the first year, okay? It's something to distribute along the 3, 4, 5 years of the PhD studies together in conversation with your supervisor. And I think from the course side, as I said, this explains a little bit the modules on the different types of credits that you will have to earn to complete these 60 credits from the courses side. Now, from the research side, and here is the bulk of credits to be gained and to be developed, we have these 180 credits for research. And there, one can start with 12 credits being awarded for the PhD plan. And here is a document, basically, in which you, together with your supervisor, describe a little bit the plan for your PhD studies, and in particular, especially the first years. So there you have to describe a little bit the courses that you plan to take, that you would like to pass, the research plan a little bit, describe what are the first steps of the first tools to become familiar, to attack some scientific problem that you want to tackle or some technology that you want to develop. And with this document, if it's well implemented, it's well described, together with your supervisor, you will be awarded already 12 credits. And the bulk of the credits for research are actually, of course, given for actual research, for actual scientific contributions. And here, principally, we divide this into 3 different contributions, each of them awarded 41 credits. And usually, each contribution is mapped, or it belongs to one scientific publication in an international journal. Typically, you have to show that to earn a PhD, you have to show that you are able to contribute to science, and that is proven by being allowed to publish in some international journal, to be able to publish your research. And you have to do this at least 3 times, typically, to show that you are able to do this not only one by chance, but actually you are consistently becoming mature as an independent researcher, and that you are able to contribute with at least 3 articles, typically, during your PhD time. And if you sum up that, then you see that you still need some other credits to reach the 180. And here is another module of 37 credits that are given for other contributions. These are contributions perhaps not related to your field of research, or perhaps not related to your thesis, but it could be earned by participating in other papers or publications not related to your thesis, by, for example, presenting your results in international conferences, by supervising other students, by popularizing, by writing blogs. Then you can achieve up to 37 credits for these other contributions not directly related to your PhD thesis. And finally, if you make the math, you still need a few more credits, and these are the 8 credits given for writing your thesis dissertation. So it's a bit ironic that after you have to write this big thesis, but it's given only 8 credits for the writing, because of course the idea is that all the other credits, most of the material that will go into the PhD thesis has been already published within these 3 contributions that you see on the screen at the moment. But for the final writing document, you will be earned 8 credits, and for that we complete the 180, which together with the courses sum up 240, which means the completion of the PhD program. So with this overview of the PhD curriculum, as you can see, as I said, the main difference perhaps is that one, that the bulk of credits, it comes from the research side, because as I said, the main difference perhaps between PhD studies and undergraduate studies in master's or bachelor's comes from the fact that now you have to generate the knowledge. Now you will be acting on the frontier of your field of research, and you have to contribute to that. You have to push that a little bit by developing new technology or by providing understanding on a topic. And that means, yes, that you will have to become a specialist, that you will have to question your field of science and the latest publications. And with 240 credits, both in courses and research, in principle, there is more than time to complete that goal of becoming a specialist. But here, what I would like to bring in the perspective is that it's only part of the journey, so to say. It's only part of the goal. But there is, I think, a bigger goal in becoming a PhD student and following a PhD program. Because yes, the main goal, perhaps, or the most observable goal is to becoming a specialist in a field of computer science, in our case. But if you use these 4 years wisely, you can become much more than a simple specialist in a field of computer science. As I said, in the nature of the PhD study is to get to know the state of the art in a field. And more importantly, perhaps, become critical of that. Now you will have to read papers, and you cannot only buy whatever they tell you in those papers. You will have to argue, you will have to criticize, you have to distinguish what is really truth and what is really overselling from the author's point of view. And this gives you a chance to become an independent thinker. And that's a skill, and that's an attitude that is much more important and applies to many orders of life other than simply PhD studies. Also, you will have to write quite a lot. And the only way to become a good writer is by writing. And here you will have the chance to write. You will have to write your PhD dissertation. You will have to write at least 3 articles, if not more. Sometimes you will have to maybe apply for some grants and, or some blog that you would like to write related to your research. So during these 4 or 5 years, you will have the chance to develop as a writer. And also, more importantly, to get feedback from others about your writing. And that's the way to improve, by writing and by getting critical feedback. And I cannot think of many better opportunities to do so while doing your PhD studies. Also, as a speaker, you will have to present your findings in a scientific conference, in the international conference, to your colleagues, to your group presentations in your lab or in the group that you join. So you will have the chance to make presentations, to become a good speaker, to receive critical feedback. So also it's an opportunity, the PhD studies, to become a good speaker. Also, as a teacher, during the credits courses, there are this didactic practice in which the idea is that you will develop or you will help with some practice or some material for some courses. So you will have to expose yourself in front of a classroom if you wish, and to conduct some teaching, and therefore develop the skills related to speak in public, to be able to teach, to be able to present some material, and together with the students to solve their questions. So as I said, it's an opportunity also for you to develop as a teacher. And also as a supervisor, in which here is a more close relationship with a few students, in which you will have to manage in a longer term the expectations, the motivations of the students, to give the material, to give feedback. So it's an excellent opportunity also to develop skills related to supervision of people. Also a manager. At the end, there will be finite resources in time. You will have to combine many things, computing resources. In many aspects, you will have to become a good manager of all these resources to succeed. So it will also allow you the opportunity to become a better organized person and to manage many things that will happen simultaneously and be able to manage those well. Also, you will have to become a little bit a public relations of your group, of yourself, of the Institute, and of Estonia. Whenever you go and have to give a talk about your research, about what you do in different institutions, or even simply in another talk to another people in the university, in a sense, you will have to defend a little bit your field of science, the Institute, and in principle, allow you also to develop skills as to act as a public relations, so to say. And also, by the way, of course, science is done internationally. I'm sure there are other groups in Europe or all over the world that conduct science in a similar field or with similar interests than you. And it's important, I think, that during the PhD also you take advantage to travel, to visit other groups. I think it's a missed opportunity if you finish your PhD and you haven't gone somewhere for a couple of days or weeks to visit other groups and other researchers, to learn from them. And finally, at the end, perhaps the most important is that you can become a cooperative person, because at the end, for these global challenges that science offers, the only way is to do it in collaboration with other people. And this skill of becoming a cooperative person, again, transcends much more than the PhD and science. About the income, already Jaak has talked a little bit, and about the travel funding. It's very easy to travel. We have a lot of funding for that. If it's justified, there should be no problem to, as I said, visit other labs and present your work in international conferences. Perhaps maybe the final message would be that the PhD is a marathon and there will be different stages. The important thing, perhaps the most important thing, is that you're motivated, that you like the topic, and that you find a good supervisor. And with this, I'm pretty sure every one of you can manage to conduct a very successful PhD. And about the last point would be about the application process to become PhD student. So perhaps the system is a bit complicated, so perhaps the most important thing to know at this stage is the following. The system is such that potential supervisors have to apply for some PhD projects. And that will happen, the deadline for supervisors to apply expires in the first round, expires on the 13th of December. So still you have around 10 days, if you have not done so, to get in contact with some supervisor, some teacher that you like, to explore the possibilities about which topics they plan to propose as PhD proposals. And as a student side, from the student point of view, the important date for you is mostly in February, when the applicants or the students will have to apply for the PhD projects that have been approved in this first round. Later on, there are another rounds, and from the student point of view, the dates to pay attention will be May, June, in which you will have another opportunity to apply to those projects that have been approved in the second round. So simply to finish, the important dates to remember from the supervisor side, for those who are listening from supervisor side, 13th of December is the deadline to submit your PhD projects in the first round. And from the student's point of view, they pay attention in February to apply for those projects approved in the first round. And with this, I would like to finish. And now I think we can look at if there are some questions in the chat. Let me have a look. And I would like to answer a few of them. So there are questions about whether you have to be the first author of all the contributions, in the 3 contributions that I mentioned on the research side. And the question is that not necessarily. You don't have to be the first authors in all of them. At least you have to be the first author in one of them. And for other contributions, as long as you have a clear contribution in that article, and you can say, this is the part that I did, and it's a significant part. It's a part that is serious and it contains certain volume. As long as you can distinguish that from your side, you don't need to be first author in all of them. But it's important that at least you can distinguish what you did compared to what other people did. So we can assign those credits to you and other credits to the other person or collaborator. So that's, in that question, yes, the answer is that not necessarily you have to be first author in all of them. And we have the PhD attestation process to also clarify these questions, to separate, to give credits for partial contributions. So every year there is this PhD attestations in which we can offer you feedback and information about how to particularly split the contributions from the papers that you publish. So on that side, we can provide information every year during the PhD attestation processes. Yeah, let's see if there are more questions. Are there opportunities to do a joint PhD between University of Tartu and some other universities? In principle, yes. There are different ways to do that. In some cases, one can sign some co-tutelle, so to say, some agreement between 2 universities to share. So the PhD student, so to say, or the PhD student will conduct part of the studies here and part of the studies in another university. So in principle, there are ways to, yes, to do that and supervise a student between the 2 universities. And I think there are also some answers in the chat related to co-tutelle, but from what I see, there are no more further questions. So I think from my side, then I will conclude my presentation, my talk. And I think next, I think comes perhaps the more important presentations and the more important talks, which are by supervisors and by PhD students in the institute. And I think the next person I would like to introduce is Mirjam Paales, who is also assistant in informatics. And I think you are already 2nd year PhD? No.
My 4th month.
4th month, okay, yes. So even younger. So Mirjam, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I get to see my slides? Thank you. Hello. So as Raul said, I'm a very new PhD student, and this is my, I guess, my first presentation as a PhD student. So I'm very interested in seeing how my next presentations are going to be different from what I believe and find important today. What I'm going to talk about let's go back. What I'm going to talk about is, as Annie suggested, I will tell you a little bit about my background, why I decided to start my PhD studies, how I found my topic and supervisors, about my daily life, and the pros and cons, or pluses and minuses of the PhD at the moment for me. because again, I'm a very, very fresh baby PhD student, actually. So my background is I studied mathematics in bachelor's, and during that time I found in myself a keen interest in psychology. So when I was in my teacher training in my master's studies, I studied lots of psychology on the side of education, and I have a master's degree in education of mathematics and IT, teaching mathematics and IT. And then I did this bold move of not entering PhD right after my master's. I spent 9 years just teaching in the university as the new title is junior lecturer, but officially until today it was an assistant, but technically it's teaching. I was teaching. The courses I've been teaching have been usually for the bachelor students of IT related to mathematics or programming or databases, so the very first level courses. And since I'm very interested in education, in psychology, in what makes, I see lots of students, I'm interested in what makes them succeed or fail or quit or learn or motivated, then I decided that it makes sense to study it a bit further. So I started my PhD studies in this September, and so far I'm gonna tell you how it's going. So I guess my topic of my research is how to study, learn, teach, how to do IT better, and this like a cross section of three important topics for me. Why I started PhD studies? It's a very good question. People ask me this a lot. The first, this is the most simple reason, and these are the reasons I find important today. Maybe I will decide on something else later. The first reason is the university is a very good place to work at. The people are good. The workplace is good. The organization, I like it. It's stable, it's a bit slow, but it makes sense for me, maybe because I've been here for a while. I find that a PhD student is a label that makes sense. For me, it's an upgrade from my last 9 years of being an assistant, because when I turn to a new person in the university or outside the university, when I say I am an assistant in this institute, it doesn't credit me as it doesn't make people trust me. When I say I'm a PhD student, people, oh yeah, I know, that's a familiar label. I can understand. I get it. You're a PhD student. What do you need? Also, this is a very, I guess, doesn't concern anyone here or most of the people listening. When I buy plane tickets, if I ever buy plane tickets again, let's say, I can, if I have had a PhD, I could say I am a doctor. I wouldn't have to specify if I'm married or whatever. So it's a little extra perk I'm hoping to receive. And so, and the basic reason, the most underlying reason is there is curiosity anyway. I want to know about things. I want to understand things, and I want to help the world understand the things about studying, learning, succeeding in IT. And now I'm just, in my PhD, I'm just using this curiosity to write it down. Or maybe this picture that says it's not science if you're not writing it down, then it's just screwing around. So how I found my topic and my supervisors. For my topic, I guess I'm using a model of Kant. I should have found someone to contribute this model. Sorry. So I've used this model of what I've already done, how to choose a career. Do something you've already done a bit. Do something that you are fairly good or okay at. Do something that you like doing, and find in those things something that the world might need. So this is why that sort of specified my topic for me. And how I found a supervisor, I knew that my first supervisor had to be someone that is closely related to the bachelor students and their program and their courses and what they're going through day by day. But the second supervisor I found basically stalking people at EDIS. I was looking at articles, I was looking who works with whom, who publishes what, who has supervised which students or which research. And this led me to my second supervisor, because she has a background in mathematics and she has been working in the Institute of Psychology for quite a while. So my daily life consists of regular meetings with my supervisor, usually once a week. We talk about research, we talk about my work. I have questions. I do lots of reading that leads to lots of questions for me because I'm only starting out, and just making plans and making decisions what to do next and talking things through. I'm a student, so I'm listening at seminars, presenting at seminars, I'm taking courses, and I'm also teaching. I'm continuing my lecture work as a lecturer also. But really, daily life, I have been become very relatable. My life is very relatable suddenly. I have blocked Facebook on my computer because otherwise I would just spend time looking at PhD memes. I have lots of excuses for not doing things, because when I don't do my regular job, I can say, oh, it's my PhD. It's killing me. And if I don't do my PhD, I'm like, oh, I have so much work to do. So it's a very lose-lose situation for me, because I have more excuses to do stuff, to not do stuff. And also I get condolences from colleagues. When I started, when the news got around, people came to me saying, I don't envy you at all. What happened? It's probably the worst time of your life. So that's, I don't know, maybe it's a thing. It's a thing. Maybe it's like, it's culture, maybe. But yeah, they're not actual like sincere condolences. They're as a joke. I have to specify that it's a joke, actually. So the pros and the cons of being a PhD student, I do what I feel is needed, but I have to be certain, and I struggle a lot with the uncertainty of what is needed and what I should do at the moment. I'm the boss of my own time, again. Can be a very wonderful thing, can be a horrible thing. And I'm basically getting paid for being curious, but it's, if I say it nicely, but it's also can be a good thing and sort of a bad thing, I guess. And yeah, that's everything from me. I guess we have the chat activated. Do we have questions for me?
Let's see. Perhaps not specifically.
Oh, nice.
We'll also have anyway the panel later on.
Wonderful.
There will be more time to address more questions.
And I can.
Yeah.
Who's next?
Riccardo is next. Yeah.
So this is for you.
Thank you.
So yeah, next is Riccardo Tommasini, and he will be speaking more from the supervisor side, perhaps.
Will I?
Yeah. He's a lecturer in data management, and I think also since he comes from Italy, he can also bring some international perspective. Perhaps he can maybe compare better between different countries, different systems. So
And I use my hands a lot.
also.
So
Thanks, Riccardo.
I expect that. The light is killing me already. So how should I do it? You do it. Okay. All right. All right. So I think I should stay here. I guess that's the right spot. Hello, everyone. It's kind of funny to be in this, remote thing. I still don't get used to it. Another year, maybe. All right. So I titled this talk "A Guide for Enthusiasts" because that's what I felt during my PhD, which actually didn't end too much at all. So I skipped the PowerPoint presentation because I already did it, and I'm gonna just do. This is how it started and how it ended. You can see the PhD is totally not stressful. Okay. I mean. Actually, this is how actually ended, to be fair, okay? And I was a bit more happy than in the other picture. Well, there was just to break the ice. The point is that actually Jaak already said today that the PhD ain't a title or a degree. It's what I wrote in my acknowledgement, which I grieve a lot about that, is that it's becoming who you're meant to be. Which sounds like a lot of intensity in this. And in Matrix, I don't know if you look at it, computer scientists, so this is said as temet nosce, which is a Latin and means know thyself. So the question is, how do you get to know yourself, right? How you get there. And after 4 years, it took me 4 years to do the PhD, I figured out you need 3 things. You need an advisor, which this is mine, Emanuele Della Valle. You need a mentor, like Morpheus, and you probably need a friend as well, because, sometimes you just have to let it out, man, because so many things. And I was lucky because my advisor was also my mentor and my friend. So, I was lucky, and he did a lot of things with me. He invented the field I'm working right now, and is also a source of inspiration because he works both in academia and industry. He taught me to go in industry and serial problems. And he read my thesis twice, which is insane. So thank you, Emanuele. And unfortunately, though, the PhD, I've been told, is the chronicle of an announced divorce. So even if you get along with your advisor very much, eventually you got to split. And this is the last handshake because that got COVID, so we couldn't even get handshake anymore. But the thing is, why? It's the chronicle of an announced divorce. Well, let's think about the research cycle for a moment. And I picture like this. You have vision, execution, and dissemination. You start here. So that's the young Riccardo that starts in execution. He got formulation of research questions, requirement, design, and are typically provided by your advisor at first, right? You focus on implementation, experimenting, analyzing the data, prototyping, and you stay here for a while. You iterate in this loop, and sometimes you go and try to disseminate it, which means you're gonna write papers, right? That's tough. You're gonna do presentation, and you're gonna give pitches. And if you're wondering why there is a cocktail icon under the pitch, it's because it didn't give a pitchy one yet, but you will know. So you stay there and you develop your skills in that sense, and eventually you end up here in the place of where advisor was. You have to make your own vision. So his vision, your vision, and you're gonna go your way, man. It's time. So that's it was a tough moment for me, honestly. It was, you become independent now, and what you're gonna do. So I'm being asked today to give you some ideas on how to choose an advisor, how to choose a topic, how to get through. These are very cool, important things to know, but I think there are better people than me who can give you a good advice. I put here 3 articles. There are links in the presentation. I shared the slides so you can go to them. So what I want to focus today is actually on the path of the PhD, which is different from the master and the bachelor, as they cleverly said before. So the bachelor is like going from A to B using P as a path. The master is going from A to B, choosing from 3 different paths or more, according to requirements, ideas, requests. PhD is different. PhD is tough. It's going from A to a B point, which is as distant from A as C is, but you don't know where it is. So the path probably looks like this. It's a bit, you go back, you go back and forth, you wander for a while, you don't really know things. And so that's how it feels sometimes, you guide yourself a little bit. So instead of giving you this advice, I'm gonna think this one is better. So I'm gonna show you a little video. I don't know if you play. This is from the Matrix. So instead of giving how to choose an advice, which is program, kind of boring a little bit, in my opinion. So let's have some fun. How about combat training? So I'm gonna teach you how to fight through your PhD today. I'm gonna try to. So jiu-jitsu. You're going to learn jiu-jitsu now. So what's jiu-jitsu? First of all, feed your head. So that's a mission in your PhD. You need to intake, and there are a lot of important things here you need to consider. I will start from the pillars: philosophy of science, epistemology, ontology, methodology, Popper, the structure of scientific revolution from Thomas Kuhn, books that, gonna make your skin go, brr, gonna give you vibes. I'm gonna teach you how science is done from, from a structural point of view. And they're gonna make you feel, a bit like ignorant at first. But then you're gonna give you structure later on. They're gonna help you intake more information, give you a system to understand things. And there are many references already in this sense. So that was my mission during my PhD. And this picture is from Alice in Wonderland. So the hookah smoking caterpillar says to Alice, feed your head. Because she's falling, right? She's wandering. That's the first thing. The first element of your jiu-jitsu. The second one is you need a method for your career. You need to become so good they can't ignore you. Now, we can wonder a little while, who are they? But I don't want to do that. That's up to you. But the method, it's something that you can find in this book. And it's not follow your passion. Why? Because the job market is just a market. And it has a capital and a currency. The capital is your skills. They should be valuable and rare. And the currency is obviously money, but more importantly is control. Control over your time, how to use it, what to do with it. So if you follow your passion, you might end up gaining control before you have the capital to sustain it. If you instead adopt a craftsmanship mindset, you build your skills. When you gain control, you can fulfill your mission. And that's nothing more satisfying than that. Then I'm going to give you another tip in the jiu-jitsu. Communication. That's a skill. And I love to attack problems by building a narrative. James Joyce said that errors are the portal of discovery. I think during your PhD, you shouldn't be afraid to be mistaken, to do errors. Actually, that's the whole point. It will give you frustration. I'm not lying about that. But the narrative through the errors, the connection, the links between the various steps is what will make you unique. You will be the only one to take that path. So that's valuable. Then I also like a poetry from Robert Frost that says, 2 roads diverged in Yellowwood, and I choose the one less traveled by. And that has made all the difference, which means that you probably feel a little lonely in that path because you are the only one taking it, but you will be the only one knowing what's at the end, right? So go for it. And the fourth element of your jiu-jitsu is the impact. So on this side, I'm very fond of it because some people think research is a paper business. We deliver papers. Some people think we deliver grants. We deliver people. That's a people business. We try to make people, get their maximum potential, becoming who they're meant to be. So this book is nice. I'll suggest you maybe at the end of the PhD. But I suggest you should work on your core values. Find the principles that drive, and this is a good way to choose your comrades and your advisor. Share the principle, the pillars that drive you and guides you through decision. If the decision process is solid, eventually you'll get to good results. It doesn't matter if today you're unlucky. Chance is always there. Then I will conclude this part with enthusiasm, because that was the guide for the enthusiasts, right? So what is enthusiasm? Enthusiasm is the thing that spells the difference between mediocrity and accomplishment. You need to enjoy your PhD. You need to embrace all the suffering and all the good moments, because that's what will pull you through, and is something that I cannot really explain. You need to do it. But I think sometimes we forget about it, and we tend to be overwhelmed by the challenges, especially this year. I think it's one good example. But the picture here was given to me by my advisor the night before the defense. It's the paint called Death, the Night, and the Wound. The wound, the dog at the bottom, is the advisor that guides you through. The knight has to go to the castle, and death threatens him. That's pretty much an element of the path. The castle look very far, but you have a good ride. You have the armor. You have the you are strong. You train for this. You prepare. So don't forget why and what drives you. Enthusiasm makes a difference. I won't lie to you. In conclusion, there is a dark side, and it's not the fun one. Depression, anxiety, it's part of the path as well. And imposter syndrome will get you. First year, second year, third year, doesn't matter. Even when you are a professor, it still gets you sometimes. And we all suffer it. So there is no successful people that never faced imposter syndrome. And if you look at this picture from nature, although people are satisfied with their PhD when they do it, after time, they cannot change their mind and say it wasn't worth it. So it's really about flipping a coin, like 50%, I'm happy, 50% I'm not. I don't think so. I think there are tools that will make you understand things. Like this book by Charlie Tarkle, Alone Together, will explain you a little bit the concept of knowledge induced by technology, like technology in the sense of focusing on something technical, and can help you a lot, like understanding things, such as thinking fast and slow. By knowing how mind works, you realize your bias is a little bit better. You can identify patterns. And the latest one, which I actually read at the end of my PhD this year, will teach you that there is a piece of chance, like some uncontrollable element that you can't do anything about it. You need to accept it. But if your decision process is solid, eventually you get there. So acknowledge the odds and just do the jump. So you need to believe though, free your mind. So I'm gonna finish here, but if you get the slides, there are some certain memes for PhD survival. So that's it from me.
Thank you very much, Riccardo.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. You have some questions about the presentation, about Riccardo. Please proceed by writing in the chat. At the moment, I don't see particular. I don't see at the moment any particular, but I think also during the panel there is plenty of time for the students to put their questions and to ask anything. So thank you very much, Riccardo. And our next speaker is Dima, who is a veteran of the PhD studies and also a lot of experience in teaching and supervising. A lot of people have grown up under his supervision. And please, Dima, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Raul. Thank you very much. So this bright light, now I understand. By the way, Riccardo looks like a Thor from the Avengers movie. You know that you look like a Thor? I don't see you anymore. So you don't see it. That's a problem, right? Yeah, so my name is Dima. I will not make it too long because I know I have very limited time spent here. Basically, what I wanted to say here is that my background, how I got here, right? So I'm here standing in Estonia, a very small country. I would never thought I will be here, but nevertheless I am. And basically how I ended up here is that I graduated from Kyiv Polytechnic Institute in 2011. And at that time, it was very popular for Ukraine to go abroad to study. And I applied for 2 universities. I found University of Tartu kind of advertisement in one of the was the exhibitions or something like this. And I applied for Aachen University and Tartu. And I got into both. I got both places, but Tartu Institute actually proposed me a scholarship, and that was a major decision breaker. So I went to Estonia, and since then, actually since 2011, I'm the happiest person alive. I actually still cannot believe that I live this dream right now. And I wanted to share all these kind of emotions and my experiences with you. So I've studied in both Institute of Computer Science and Tallinn Technical University because I was in this double program. I also went for exchange semester, and now I'm actually a PhD candidate since 2013. And this slide is very optimistic because it's trying to make it look I'm going to finish it in 2020, which is going to be over in less than a month, which means I will definitely not make it. But I did all that was required to write the thesis, and actually basically most of it is ready. So I'm very hopeful that beginning of 2021, it will be soon done. So I'm seeing a dawn of my PhD. So I'm basically coming back and looking back at my PhD. There are a couple of things I wanted to tell you. And I also mentioned projects, but I'll talk about them later. So what I wanted to tell you is my story, how I ended up doing what I have been doing. And I wanted to start with saying that basically I started with a very vague understanding of the world. I actually knew that I am somewhere in the computer science land because I have been studying bachelor. Then I got into master's and I realized that my place is somewhere in this land. I started taking courses, for example, Jaak's course in algorithms. I learned some data mining, and I realized that, all right, this computer science land is a little bit kind of complicated. And then I started doing some project work, and I learned that the world is even more complicated than I thought before. There are endless and bottomless oceans of math and biology, forests and statistics and economy lands and so on and so forth. And the boundaries between these worlds are quite imaginary because there are lots of things that happen in the intersection of these kind of fields. I was particularly interested in this place where the computer science overlaps with biology. So in Computer Science Institute, we have here this ATI day, which is basically a day when all the submarines, they come to the surface, they open their doors and they let the students in because the students need to find supervisors and graduate. So I went into one of these, actually organized by Jaak's group, by bioinformatics group, and I realized that these people actually leave my own dream because they actually are computer scientists that do things in biology. And I wanted to become a doctor, and I was very bad in biology, to be honest. So I decided to go to computer science, and here they are, the people like myself that work in this intersection. That basically help biologists and help doctors to do things that matter for patients and matter for the humankind in the sense that understanding what the hell is happening inside our bodies. So I was completely sold into this idea, and I never regretted my choice. This is, by the way, these people who became eventually my extended family and who are my extended family until this day. And I made this part my interest land. So my perfect interest land. And I call it welcome to whatever Dima has done during his PhD land. So there are multiple things I have done. And I just wanted to briefly walk you through these things to show you what can be your path. So this is my path, but it could be also something that would resemble what you would do. So I want to start with something I have started with. This is called autoimmunity. If you have never known or you don't know what autoimmunity is, in a short, it's what depicted on the picture. Basically, immune cells start to attack the body's own cells. So there is an internal war that's happening. So diabetes is one of the types of conditions that happen in autoimmunity. What happens is that in this kind of projects, we collect blood from people, we pour them on something called protearray, and we get a bunch of these protearrays from different people with a condition and without condition, and then we measure how much of proteins are there attacked in the body, and then we try to make actually sense of this data. So this is what has been happening for my thesis. So this is actually work has been done for my thesis, and that's what I hope to defend with. And that's what I think will hopefully eventually make into some clinical practice and maybe at least help to understand how these things like diabetes come to be. So this is what regarding the autoimmunity. I have done quite a bit of research in medical imaging. So there were plenty of plenty of hours spent looking at different images of the human body from as many angles as you can imagine, from things like retinas to things like MRIs and CT scans and trying to figure out the volumes of heart to actual images of cells under the microscope. So this actually deserves a separate slide. We had a project, a collaboration with a company called PerkinElmer. PerkinElmer company makes microscopes that make pictures like this one on the slide. And then the quest was, can you build an AI that can detect these cells from these kind of images? And that's what we have been doing for 4 years. Well, this is already the 4th year, so it's 3+ years of this kind of research. So actually, we do a lot of industrial collaborations here in Institute of Computer Science. If you're worried that you're going to work on some kind of just on some kind of pure theoretical concepts, then this is not the case. We actually also work on very practical problems. I have also done some research in medical signal. For example, there was a project where we took breathing sounds, we recorded them with some special equipment, we transformed them into spectrograms, which were then somehow made into the data sets. And we used machine learning to train on these data sets and predict, let's say, types of treatments that the person should get, or some kind of disease diagnosis, what kind of disease a person has. This specific project was from my bachelor student, Richard here, and so these kind of projects also were there on the table. I have been, as Raul also mentioned, I have been very active giving talks and teaching. So I have been teaching and giving talks all over the place. For example, I am still acting instructor of the machine learning course. I'm also junior lecturer, by the way, since, I don't know, was it January, I think. Until now, I'm data science assistant. So I'm actually giving a course in machine learning course. This is me and my TAs in machine learning course. And this is me teaching in a foreign university. I have also given a bunch of workshops and talks all over the place. For example, here's a picture from Kiev, from Milan, from Budapest, from Lviv, from Tartu, from Cambridge, from Lviv again. And I also given, once I even given a few lectures for the online course. So something I'm very proud of until I watched this actual lecture. I looked awful, actually terrible. It was 8 o'clock in the morning and I look terrible. Yeah, so I given a bunch of talks. I'm really happy about these talks. I think every time I invested part of my soul, like in the Voldemort, I actually have put some part of it into these talks. And of course, all this is pretty cool, but there are things that go sideways, as both Mirjam and Riccardo already mentioned, that in PhD, a lot of things go sideways, and you actually find yourself doing something crazy. Like in my case, I was actually working with a neuroscience group. At the time, they had this very bad equipment called the motive epoch that measures the potential from the core of your skull. And then we would, with my friends Ilya and Anna, we would actually visualize the sources of the signal, and we would call it sources of thoughts in the brain. Sometimes, due to us being students, these sources would go outside of the brain, and we would think that these are just, the space sends us some thoughts. Another thing that I wanted to mention is the self-driving project. So I ended up being on one of the leads in the self-driving project, and we have this pretty cool car, but we have even more cool Tambet that is in the front of the car, and this is us controlling the car using a gamepad. So this kind of crazy shit you can actually end up doing in a PhD is actually playing with a car, being inside a car using gamepad without any driving license. I have done that. So thank you very much. This is all for me.
Thank you, Dima, very much. After hearing all these talks, I wonder if I should do the PhD again. It sounds very, very attractive. So I think there are not specific questions again in the chat. So I would like to ask the people again, remember, this is for you. Any questions, comments, curiosities you might have, is your time. Huh? We will have also time during the panel session, but also you can ask questions.
Or will we ask questions to them?
Or we ask questions to them. If they don't ask, then they will have to answer them. Okay, so our next speaker is André Tättar from the Natural Language Processing Group. I think he's already second or third year student, and Kairit Sirts, sorry, I'm sorry. Via Zoom, sorry. I flipped to talk. So yes, the next speaker is Kairit Sirts, who will join us from Zoom online, and there she is. So Kairit is a research fellow in language technology, and she has been in our institute since a number of years, and hope she can tell us a little bit about her experience with the PhD as also supervisor. So Kairit.
Hello, can you hear me? So my name is Kairit Sirts. I'm a research fellow in natural language processing, and we may or may have not met yet, depending on whether you have already taken the master's level natural language processing course. But I was asked to cover a number of points in my presentation, starting with my own academic background, then some reasons why you might consider doing a PhD, then how to find a suitable topic and a supervisor, and what are the other possible opportunities after completing the PhD. And finally, I add some other points that I consider relevant. So I actually did my master's, I have a bachelor's in informatics in Tallinn University of Technology, where I finished 2003. And then I did the master's also in informatics in TUT 2008. And I got 2 kids meanwhile, and that's why it took like 4 years. And that was also the time when the Estonia went over to the Bologna system. So previously there was like 4 years bachelor and 2 years master's. And then now it became 3 years bachelor's and 2 years master's like you have it now. And this happened all during that time. And that means that it was a huge mess, that the courses that were supposed to be lectured for my curriculum were not lectured anymore. And so somehow it was a mess, but I got it done. And then I started the PhD also in TUT, and my kids were then, the older was 3 and the younger was 1. And I'm just pointing it out to encourage sort of the female candidates here to show that it is actually possible to also do academic work while having young kids. And then I worked for like 2-3 years under the supervision of a quite famous mathematics professor emeritus in TUT. And by the end of the 3rd year, I really panicked because I realized that if I'm going to continue like that, I'm just never going to finish this PhD. And then I actually thought, I was encouraged by a friend of mine, and I thought, like, who is this person I would really like to work with and from whom I would like to get supervision? And then I figured out that there is one person working in the University of Edinburgh. And anyways, somehow things ended up like that this person became my co-supervisor, and things got back on track. And so I graduated 2015. Then I did a postdoc at Macquarie University in Sydney. And then starting from 2016, I'm working in UT. Okay. So why you should consider, or why you could consider doing PhD. And I mean, these points are in no particular order, really. I just try to group them by some categories. I titled them as content and time and maybe some other aspects. And in terms of content, I think you are a good person to pursue a PhD if you like to learn new things. But not only that, I also mean that you're maybe willing to let go of sort of everything you know and start just learning everything from scratch. And that's of course a bit of a stretch because you never need to really forgo everything you know, but in computer science field, things really can change quickly, and you really might need to learn things from the beginning, from time to time, and do not do that via some course, but really via your own individual study. The second point I would like to point out is that you like to work on the edge of the unknown, which in your PhD work means that you hope that something will work and you try it out and it doesn't. And I think it happens like many times. Most often it happens more than not. And then instead of giving up and saying, well, this thing did not work, you should actually take a step back and try again. To ask why it didn't work, what could make it work, try again, and do that possibly many, many times without getting too much discouraged. In terms of time, I think you should like to work independently. I think research groups are very different in terms of how they work. I mean, some are based on very much individual work or quite lonely work. And then some other groups, there are kind of very cohesive group work going on. But nevertheless, in order to make your own contribution, you have to be willing to do independent work. And that means taking initiative and being proactive about your part of work, thinking independently about your problems. Then it has been already pointed out, I think, by Mirjam, that you can be the master if you like to be, and then you can be the master of your own time, because then you will have a very flexible time schedule. Although there can be certainly research groups where you are told quite a lot what to do and when. But the flexibility means that on the one hand that maybe you can take a day off in the middle of a week if you need to, but on the other hand, it also means that you have to be willing to work with really minimum breaks when there is, for instance, an important deadline, paper deadline approaching, for instance. And some other aspects, Jaak said something about scholarships, but I think in principle you should not be so fond of earning a lot of money, because definitely if you would go to a company, you would earn much better in the field of computer science. And the final point is that you should be able to, or willing to tolerate the stress of not knowing. Because the goal is to create some knowledge that is not there yet, and just so you can't possibly know how to actually get there. And as I said, in most cases, things just won't work the first time you try. But the practice shows that people actually will get there one way or in another, although in many cases, things might change in unexpected ways meanwhile. Okay, so how to find a topic and a supervisor. So I think most important is to actually choose the topic you like, or that is interesting to you, or that you find important, because it would be really difficult to work on 4 or plus years on something that you are not really interested in. Of course, you are restricted by the topics that the potential supervisors offer. But in most cases, you do have considerable freedom to tailor the topic to your own interests. So how to choose a supervisor? I think one point is to try to find a supervisor that matches with your style. I mean, the topic first, but the style as well, because supervisors are different in terms of in the ways how they work. I mean, some are very hands-on, some meeting with you regularly, some are more loose, maybe expecting that you just come to them with a paper draft ready. And some are maybe micromanaging, expecting you to report every day what you're doing. And then I would like to state this obvious thing, that you should choose a supervisor who is an active researcher. I think this is not the problem in University of Tartu, but this is the problem I faced in my own PhD, that although my PhD advisor was very famous in Estonia and very successful in supervising PhD students, he wasn't doing active research, and that was problematic for me. But nevertheless, I would like to say that everything can be adjusted later. I mean, if things won't go just quite right in the beginning. Now, life after PhD, I don't want to maybe talk a lot about it here because this has been already covered by Jaak. So the 3 options: continue in academia, start your own company, work in a company. But I also would like to point out this 4th option, that you can actually do also something completely different. Because completing a PhD gives you kind of an experience that you can accomplish whatever you want. And for some people, I mean, this something completely different can actually be even just start a family for which you haven't had time, for instance. And I'm currently, for instance, a master's student in clinical psychology. So I don't know where it leads, but I think it's one way to diversify my life, let's say. So what else? So in the end, producing the thesis is your responsibility. Everyone else, supervisors, they can only help. Secondly, so Riccardo said something about that the PhD is an announced divorce, but I would like to point out that you're not married to a supervisor, which means that you can actually and you should collaborate with anyone you want. Also, work proactively. So you don't need your supervisor approval for every step you do. So maybe you have agreed something that you do something, but then when you have some other thoughts that you should try something else, so then by all means just do it. You don't need to ask permission. And PhD is hard work, and so it's good to find ways to sort of keep yourself motivated and sane, like friends, family, hobbies, leisure time, counseling if you need, side projects. Finally, I would like to say that it's a huge commitment doing a PhD, but it's really a first step in your future life as a degree holder. It gives you lots of experience and knowledge. It trains you to work independently at the edge of human knowledge, opens up new opportunities, but it doesn't mean that you have to continue on that path or that topic forever. It doesn't mean that you have to do a major breakthrough in the science. It's really like a first step. And also one figure in my slide, I think it's a very nice comic. So what is a PhD is if this empty circle shows the boundaries of human knowledge, then your first goal when doing a PhD is to sort of approach that boundary and then really push. And once you push through, no matter how tiny bit, then you have actually done your PhD. And that's what I would like to finish with here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kairit, for telling us a little bit about the whole process from selecting the supervisor till the life after the PhD studies. See if there are some questions in the chat at the moment. Yeah, well, somebody's asking about what happens when what is interesting for the person is changing over time. Like some people who doesn't have maybe a topic that likes over a long time, but is switching between topics. Maybe that's a question that we can also address perhaps in the panel, I think. So I will annotate it and I will formulate it during the panel. So we can move towards our last speaker, who is Tättar from the Natural Language Processing Group. He's Junior Research Fellow. Moreover, I think you're a representative of students. I think at some point you were in the faculty and in the Dean office. So please, Andre.
Okay, thank you. I'm very anxious. I'm not a good public speaker. I'm sorry if I start, I don't know, not knowing what to say, whatever. I am Andre. I'm doing my third year in PhD in natural language processing group. Mark Fischel is my supervisor. I've been studying all my life now, so 12 years in Valga. So that's the point. I just wanted to say that you can be average student in Valga gymnasium and still make it to PhD. I've been in University of Tartu all the time. I started with physics. I was in physics and I did my first semester successfully. Then I took a course of programming, which was given by Eno Dennisson. And after that, I made my first print Hello World. And I knew that, okay, physics is completely wrong for me. In bachelor, I did something completely different that I'm doing right now. In first year of master's, I was also doing completely unrelated stuff. And now I'm doing mostly machine translation and everything doing with machine translation. So quality estimation, metrics, the machine translation itself. But I also am interested in all kinds of other fields. So I have a paper actually in time series analysis. I would say the single most important thing to why you should do a PhD is you get paid for your own curiosity. I can read research papers all day long, whole week. It's something I love to do. You also get to travel. You get the title, like Mirjam said, so you're a doctor. As a small joke, maybe it's nice to do some useful stuff, but one of my biggest advantages for me that PhD gives is it's nice to understand research. I'm reading about all kinds of research every day. That's what I like to do. So I would say if you are looking to do a PhD, don't wait and look for offers. Go show interest and ask and say what you want to do, because there are actually more PhD spots than there are people who are willing to do them. So the PhD students are in a good spot because you can make your own terms basically. Just find people you want to work with, because the most important thing is that you are interested in this topic. Of course, maybe you have a good chemistry with somebody who wants to do like the person or the supervisor, but I think the interest itself is much more important. But I am lucky to have both. I'm interested in machine translation and have a good chemistry with Mark and the rest of the NLP group. So my recipe for good or successful PhD career is ask great questions and then solve those questions, or solve those questions first and then start asking. So you don't have to necessarily follow the scientific approach of making a hypothesis, doing the experiment. You can have the data-driven approach, or you can just look at data, do something interesting, think that, oh, this is cool, and then ask the question and get that publication. It's not very scientific, but I think it works. And one of the biggest advantages for me with PhD is that have been traveling a lot. 2 weeks ago, I should have been in Dominican Republic. I'm still angry about that because it's I really wanted to go there. Second is network and collaborate. And I put this as a pipeline to actually get research articles. I am a big fan of collaborating, make everything public, share your ideas, have many research papers or more like write many research papers at the same time. So I can share a story. I was collaborating with Matt Post from US, Johns Hopkins University, and we developed the idea at the event, Machine Translation Marathon. And then from that idea, he published 10 different research papers. I was part of two of those, but from that single idea. And I would say networking and visiting and attending conferences is one of the biggest advantages of PhD. And it's very, very beneficial for your own work to go and collaborate and network. I was a little bit repeating myself, but okay. So my life, I come here, I have coffee, do some research or do some projects, then repeat or have lunch, have coffee again, research projects. Of course, I talk with my colleagues a lot in the kitchen when I have coffee. Sometimes the coffee breaks is an hour long, but I think it's a very necessary part of research to talk about everything. And the second thing I want to mention for a successful PhD is that when you're doing your project, ask a great question: how can I turn this into research? Because if somebody is paying you money to do or to solve a problem, then somebody is going to want to read about what you did. And you can get very, very good research by making your projects also into your research. And yeah. So the positives and negative sides of the PhD, I'm going to be a little bit controversial here. The negative sides, I was thinking there's none. And the positives is that for me, PhD is easy. I get to contribute to science and I have freedom to do almost anything. And I was also thinking like, what else? So I would say one positive thing is also no stress. The biggest anxiety I've felt for a year probably is right now. But I didn't get to put it on the slides. I was thinking for 2 or 3 hours the negative sides of PhD, but I came up with one thing, and that is teaching. I hate teaching. I cannot do it. So I probably maybe related to my presentation anxiety, but I would say the most sad or hopeless feeling I have had is when I was teaching. So when I was teaching, I couldn't focus on research much. Took very long time, and yeah, I would say the biggest problem with PhD is teaching. But it was kind of like you had to teach once. I did it much more, mainly for the salary. Now I'm not doing it. I'm much happier. This is, of course, not the case for everybody, just for me. But on the other side, so why I say PhD is easy and not stressful at all is because after I got rid of teaching, which wasn't part of the PhD, but was like a job, then everything was amazing. Yeah. And my future, or where I aim to go after, well, 1.5 years, is to do a postdoc in machine translation. I am hoping for a company like Amazon, Facebook, Google, or Salesforce or something like that. And after that, I don't know, maybe work in NLP or MT and finance, something like that. Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Andre. I would like to disagree with you. I think you made a very clear presentation. And thank you to tell us the journey that you took into the PhD. And we hope that next year you make it into the Dominican Republic.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that, we finish all the speakers from the students and the supervisors side. I hope they gave you an account from first hand about their experiences. I think there is very valuable information in there. And still more valuable information will be perhaps during the panel session that we will conduct with all the speakers after a break of 3 minutes to reconvene. And then there is an opportunity for everyone to contribute to the discussion, to the debate, to ask questions that we have not formulated yet. And as I said, after 3 minutes, we will reconvene. So welcome back. I see that most of the audience is still there. We're still 57 people. And during the next up to half an hour, but not necessarily maybe so long, but during the next 20, 30 minutes, the idea is to have a panel discussion, especially if possible driven by questions from the audience. But if not, I have some questions myself that I think will be interesting for our main audience, which in principle are those students in the master level or perhaps even earlier, the bachelor level, who are asking themselves whether it's worth to follow a PhD studies, whether they have what it takes to become PhD studies. And perhaps maybe that's one question I would like to trigger to all of you. I guess at some point you made a decision, of course, obviously. And maybe my question would be, what was the thing that you were maybe scared of when considering to go for PhD studies? What was the thing that now when you look backward, you thought, okay, actually I shouldn't have worried so much about that? Was any such a thing, or you had it clear from the beginning that you wanted to do a PhD? You didn't have any doubts whatsoever? How was your cases?
I'm very lost because I can't remember any of these blockers or stoppers. I think in my case it was very natural. I was hanging around in the same classes, and then I was hanging around with the same people, and then I thought for myself, wow, these people are going to pay me for being more smart. How cool is that? I think this is the best sales kind of deal you can make. I didn't have much doubts, to be honest. Maybe this because I was not too smart, and maybe I should have had some doubts, but I can't remember. Sorry.
I'm gonna take the last one because.
Me?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay, I of course had my biggest one was like, would I get more money if I was working? And but then there was this balance of like money versus the human I want to be or become. And in the end, I was thinking that I want to be a research scientist, and going from master's, that's possibility, but I didn't find any way to do it in Estonia. So I made a decision to come to PhD, and I'm doing some things on the side to account for the wage or money or whatever.
Riccardo, something to
So
add?
regarding doubts, not really, because I didn't consider it. So for me, it's a funny story. So I missed one class in one course, and a professor said, since you're dodging classes, when I ask questions now. So I was looking at the slides of the professor, which happened to be my advisor, and I said, oh, this stuff is cool. Let me look for a thesis. And he asked me, would you be interested in a PhD? I said, what's a PhD?
So the PhD catch you rather than
yeah,
the way around.
right. That's how it happened. And then after that, I still don't know how everything happened, and just I end up here. And but yeah, no. Of course, I had the down moments where I say, do I fit but never like, is this the right path? I think it was like cool thing happening and enjoying it moment by moment.
I think in my case, if I can add something, it was very much like it has a lot of inertia. It has a lot of, for me, it was kind of a natural step. I didn't even consider other options because after you do the bachelor, the master, kind of a very natural step for, if you have the interest, at least, it's a very natural step. Huh?
Okay, so I actually also step in here because I'm actually also in your panel, although I'm not there. So I just wanted to say that I didn't have any doubts because I was extremely naive. And I hope the people who are attending our event here will not be that naive, but I didn't really realize what that entails. And maybe it's a good thing that I didn't realize because otherwise maybe I wouldn't even consider that option. So I don't know if it's good or bad.
I'm sorry. So for me, it's really surprising still now knowing, actually I did it, and it's surprising to know that very few people actually made it through. If you look at the numbers, there is a 20% success rate, which is remarkably low, and which makes me wonder. I had my low moment, my up, my peak, my half moment, and how many low moments I didn't see, and how every story of a PhD is different. So it's really hard to compare. During my PhD, 2 guys dropped. Actually, one woman and a guy. They dropped from Milan. So it's not an easy path. And actually, that was one doubt. Like seeing people drop it, was like, why I'm not struggling that much? Maybe I'm not pushing myself enough. Then eventually.
But many people who drop, actually, in many cases, they do it for other reasons. Perhaps,
absolutely. Yeah. But it's also an age where life happens, in a different speed, I guess. It's between the 20s and 30s, so you can get family. Another thing happens. So
maybe related to that, I would like perhaps to throw a question also to Kairit from the female perspective. Then you mentioned you had 2 kids also on the way. Did that happen during the PhD exactly, or was a bit before or a bit after? How could you reconcile family life, so to say, with PhD? Was it easier because it was more flexible with PhD rather than working with companies? Or how did you find that balance, or how?
So I started PhD when my kids were 3 and 1, so very young. And now in retrospective, I think it was a very good thing that I got the kids immediately before, because if you do your PhD and you complete it, then you need to go to postdoc, you need to do other stuff, you can't really very easily jump off the train to take time off to get kids. It's certainly possible, and I hope women do it. But I'm personally very happy that it somehow happened like that. But what you need in order to do that is, of course, a very supportive spouse. Because I actually, as I said, I had my supervisor in Edinburgh. I also spent time, half a year, in a row in Edinburgh. And my husband was at home with kids. So I was just visiting once per month. And it was all possible because of being equal parents. And I also was in postdoc alone for a year. That was also possible due to that, because of that. But the kids were also older.
So let's see if we have some questions from the chat. As I said, it's the opportunity. If you have any curiosity, any comments, any questions, just write it in the chat and we will address it here in the panel, and we will try to answer and give you our best answer. Meanwhile, maybe let me touch perhaps another topic that I think many people who are thinking whether to consider or considering whether to join a PhD program or not, maybe they are asking themselves. And at least it's a question that I find that many people are asking, do I have what it takes to do a PhD? Many people think that PhD you have to come with a completely new scientific revolution. Many people think that you have to create something that is on the cover of Nature. And maybe I would like to ask you, related to that, what in your experience is the single most important characteristic that a PhD student has to have to succeed, so to say, in a PhD. Maybe not so much from the background point of view, but perhaps from the skills or from the aptitudes, perhaps. What do you think is the thing that really predicts whether a student will manage well, will succeed, will enjoy the PhD? You have any?
I guess I can start here. I would prefer to start last in the last one.
Since
But now I have something to say. Yeah.
Since I went last, you can go first.
Okay.
So I guess stillness is the most important thing, as well as drive, like being able to renovate your motivation. But probably stillness is more important, because at every meeting where you have your supervisor is a small defense, right? So you need to be able to
Stillness, you mean?
like keeping like the focus, like keeping being stubborn in that sense, with the ideas sometimes.
Persistence.
Persistence, resilience. I mean, the idea of staying there even when it's painful, because from pain comes wisdom. So stay there, and there are many moments of frustration. Like I would say, when you have an advisor, you need to convince him of things, and he's the first person you have to convince. And there are the reviewers, and eventually there are the thesis reviewers. So you need to be. I don't think it's confidence, because confidence it's some. I don't think it's just that. I think it's something more like, as I said in my presentation, you need to understand that your thought process is not flawed, and you be convinced that eventually you get to the truth, right? So that's was, I think, it's the most important thing. Not technical skills. I think those things come along.
Yeah, this can be. I also tend to agree that the most important thing is attitude rather than background or skills, because this can be learned. I never, when selecting also PhD students, or I think the most important thing to me is the attitude rather than the skills or background. Of course, this can.
So can I play a chair and ask what kind of attitude are you? So do you mean persistence? And maybe Kairit can also comment at some point. Kairit, what's your take on it? What's your kind of?
Yes, actually, the first word that came to my mind was also persistence. Persistence plus luck, I think, is a very good combination.
I mean, luck or chance? Because
yeah, I don't know.
Mathematic people,
People tend to assign luck as to property, but it's definitely just a tossing a coin, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes.
I mean, I think some people are lucky in that sense that they start to do something right quite from the beginning. And for some people, they're not so lucky. They just wander around a lot and waste time and hopefully get on track later.
So forgive me for the provocation, but I think the luck is those who don't think right first, because during the PhD, you have to face rejection many times. And I was never like a good student, the best student in my class. When I faced rejection during my PhD, it wasn't new to me. Okay, you have to do more. And I had friends, much better students than I was, actually got crashed much more when, so it was just a joke, of course. But I think there is also some opportunity that.
That's totally true. I also can relate that there's so many examples of perhaps master students who maybe don't have the best grades, but later on in the PhD do maybe much better than perhaps some of the master students that got even better grades. Because I think the skills a little bit in master and PhD differ. So it's not only about applying known tools or only about receiving and memorizing unquestionable knowledge. It's about a search process, and there the skills can be a bit different. And
I agree. Yeah. I mean, at the end, any degree in proper sense is a system that you can overfit. You cannot overfit anything in the PhD. Because the feedback process is too long. So you don't have time to optimize that.
And when you know the system, it's already
it's defended.
Yeah.
I guess I could maybe play. Could also add something. Play a devil's advocate, and I would say that yes, the persistence also came to my mind first, but then thinking about the past experiences and all the students I have supervised over the years, there's something else. There's the social aspect that you should actually get along, not just with your supervisor, which would be a very important thing to do, but also with other students in your team and the students outside of your team. So I think the social soft aspect, this kind of ability to not to make enemies all around the place, is something that I think is somewhat maybe put on the second role, but I think it's also very important.
I actually very much agree with that. I mean, I have come to realize over time that this social aspect of maybe even extroversion, being extroverted, it will be a huge plus. But extroversion is something you cannot really change. But I mean, it's possible to learn social skills. I mean, for instance, for me, like this kind of mingling or networking has been very difficult all the time. And I think I could have been like, I could potentially be more successful just if I would be more like skillful in that. So that's a huge asset, I would say. I totally agree.
Yeah, I also totally agree. And also I think the supervisor there has a role in understanding that there are different personalities with PhD students, providing also some support for some team building sometimes. Some people are more extroverted, some people less, but the supervisor is the one also who can play a role in harmonizing the team, providing support that everyone in the team or in the other PhD students support each other and collaborate. And I think that's also a very important environment that has to be nurtured by the supervisor also to make it fertile.
Yeah, you should jump in. Go ahead, what's the important thing?
Like I mentioned in my talk that I think the main important thing is the curiosity of new things. I'm lucky enough to have that. But the other points have been good too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, probably it's not a single one aspect, but there are several. But I think we mentioned already here some, so people can relate a little bit that I think you don't need to be ultra genius and develop the biggest discovery ever to have a PhD. It's more about these skills. This will lead you to good research and independent research, and that's as you said, becoming. That's what is about the thing.
This is very important to say what we think is not necessary to succeed in PhD. I think being genius is definitely something that many people might think that you should be or must be very smart. And then they look at, for example, Riccardo, and they think that he is perfect, right? He's got them so cool, and I'm not so cool, right? And then some people might think that I'm not good enough for that. But he has been on this path for quite a long time, right? So we are now talking about, we have been discussing that PhD will get you far with your critical abilities, with your maybe your thinking abilities, but it doesn't mean that we all started the same way. So it's okay to it's okay if you don't feel like you're next Darwin, or if you don't feel like you're next Elon Musk. That's fine. You will develop. You will get better. You will get so much wiser and yeah. So these kind of things.
I will add one thing. I have talked to people, and people are afraid of negative feedback, or I would say negative feedback is amazing, because okay, you submit your paper to your, let's say, to your supervisor or to a conference, and you get negative feedback, but that just means you can improve it a lot, and you can submit it again, and not worrying too much about negative feedback. I think that's one of my good advantages, that I don't feel that stress so much, or the depression to, I got some negative feedback. Oh no, well, this is end of everything. So
that's important, not to take it personal. It's not about you. Yeah. It's some person who reads your work, and sometimes it has misconceptions. Sometimes the referees are wrong, and sometimes are right. And the right attitude is to take the best of that, to improve the paper, and submit it again, and don't take it personal. I think that's a very important attitude.
Yeah, I think building on this, there are 2 points. First of all, your advisor is a human being as well, so he's not perfect, and you should not seek perfection. That's not. You should seek excellence, which is a different thing. And if you're a perfectionist, you're probably going to have a hard time doing a PhD. I'm not saying you should not try to deliver quality work. Absolutely, the opposite. but you need to accept that the work won't be perfect. So you need to accept that, and there are some moments where you need to go for feedbacks, and sometimes your advisor is enough. Sometimes you need to go for the community, which is sometimes they have less attachment to you, so they can crash you. But I think that's very important. Yeah, don't seek perfection, because it's not going to pay off in that sense.
Yeah, so I think we have covered a little bit on the attitudes or skills that perhaps are more useful for the PhD. And now I see we have already 2-3 questions in the chat, so I would like to ask you with those. Maybe let's start by the shortest one, perhaps. That is, how long can it be a PhD period? I see some people do it in 7 years or so.
Oh yeah, that would be me.
Maybe there are different reasons for that. Kairit, Dima, who would like to speak about that?
Kairit, how many years did you spend?
7.
I think Jaak can comment a little bit on that.
No, let's not go into Jaak. Okay?
The joke is that I did it for 11 years until I got the.
Now 7 years seems short, huh?
Well done, Kairit.
So what's the question? Was how many?
Yeah, how long it takes a PhD? Why it takes sometimes 7 years? I think there are many factors to that. Some people have to balance also with personal lives. Some people also take it a bit more easy and combine with other job maybe. In principle, I mean, I think it should be possible. It is possible to do it in 4 or 5 years if things go okay. Sometimes, yes, with some research, it takes a bit longer. But in principle, if everything goes okay, I think 4 or 5 years is okay.
Yeah,
it can be longer, 5, 6 sometimes, but I think 4 or 5 should be manageable.
Yeah. So in Italy, it's 3 years officially.
In Italy,
which is insane in my opinion. But yeah, they give you 3 years, but most of the people extend at least 1 year. So that's what I did as well. I think if you go straight away from the master thesis, you might have a chance to do that. But otherwise, it's gonna be really hard, because the first year you just get up to speed. I don't think the duration really matters though, because you should not get fear of missing out something. Like, you're really working on yourself, so you're not. If you finish later, it's because it was meant to finish later. That's not a big deal. And you finish when you're done, not when you're tired. That's the point.
In that sense, I think you grow all the time. So if you finish after, let's say the finish is simply related to, yes, when you deliver your thesis. But regardless if that takes 4, 5, 6 years, you grow on the way. So it's not that because you do it in 6 years, you did it worse than a person who did it in 4.5. During all this time, you're developing, you're becoming something else, you're becoming someone else with skills that apply in many areas transcending science. So as Riccardo mentioned, it's not the most important question at all. If you do it in
I would also like to maybe mention that the process is rarely linear. So I think it often tends to be like quite slow in the beginning and then speed up quite suddenly later times. And it's very hard to predict when it will happen, like in the beginning.
Yeah, I agree.
At some point, you just realize that it's easy peasy and you just do it. And at some point, it feels like it's impossible. You never reach that goal. So
right.
I do agree with Kairit that it's definitely non-linear. And also what Riccardo showed us, that's very, very much twisted and
But since time flies when you're having fun, I suggest that if you're having fun with your PhD, it's going to be faster. So that's my push. Just try to enjoy it, because it's a lot of things to enjoy there.
Sometimes it happens that from the supervisor side, you have to press a little bit for the student to graduate. So it can happen also that some people like
increased pressure and the student deliver the thesis.
It also might be, due to multiple factors that you do not have much control of, as in. Maybe your initial field of research or whatever you have been starting with has been deprecated. Nobody is interested anymore in that. You should start over again. That's something you wouldn't be able to predict. maybe something that your supervisor should have been thought about. But then also supervisors are human beings, as we have just discovered, and they also don't know exactly. And then there are multiple things related to technology and Google rolling out their new service, which is your thesis title. And
Yes.
and then all sorts of things like that. So it's also, there are many external factors that influence that.
Do you think the topic is that important? Because if I think I like choose mine, like I could have done. I mean, there are things I definitely would have done that I know, but I don't think the topic is a mean to an end, right?
Yeah.
So
absolutely agree. I think sometimes I think, okay, I did the thesis on this, but other topic I would have enjoyed, because when you go, if you like science in general, if you're a curious person, when you go into detail into something and you discover how wonderful the mechanism is, or how nice is the science around it, or you enjoy reading books on the topic, if you are like that person, type of person, one topic you enjoy it, another topic you would have enjoyed also, another topic probably you have enjoyed also. Of course, as Riccardo said, maybe there are some topics, some fields that you don't like. But if you're really a curious person, there are many topics that you would have enjoyed, different maybe from the one that you end up doing. So I think I like so many topics that
I have something to say about this. Yes, many people in mathematics group tease me for being part of the ADL lab, autonomous driving lab, and saying how far is your self-driving car from what actually we do. Quite far.
I still you enjoy it.
I'm absolutely happy. Yeah, with all the things.
and you can drive to the hospital. Or to the lab, sorry.
Yeah.
Self-driving ambulance.
Healthcare plus self-driving.
So perhaps we can tackle another question that was formulated in the beginning. Is about again, some people mentioned 4 years seems like a long period of time. This person wants to make sure that the investment is worthy. So he wants to ask all the speakers, like, how did you find the inspiration and the motivation? What was the thing that drove you? Could you share your experience about it and give some advice in figuring out whether this time is worth investing or not? I have my opinion there, but perhaps if you let me add, one thing that you need to be aware is that the process is reversible. If after 1-2 years life comes in the middle, or some other interest of you really grows a lot, of course it's a multi-year commitment, as Jack said in the beginning, but it's reversible. If some life comes in the middle, you can still also do other things or try to compatibilize it with other interests or other works even. So it's not if I commit now, it means I'm here for the next 6 years and there is no way out, even if you hate it. It's not the case. Huh? You can always give it a try. Hopefully you will like it, and you will, anyway, you have to commit, of course. But it means that if something more important comes in your life and you really want to change, it's not a jail, okay? And my personal view is that, in a sense, it's like a feeling. I think your gut feeling will tell you a little bit also with this information that we give you. You have a gut feeling whether you like to pursue a PhD or not. And I would say follow that gut feeling a little bit if you think it's something that really likes you. At least I think you will regret later in life if it's something that really piques your interest and you didn't do it. I think it's something you could regret. Well, if you do it, you tried, you see how it goes. I don't think PhD is something that many people regret of having done, in my point of view.
I'm blessed by self-motivation. So now I'm joking, of course. I think for me, it was super important range, like doing a lot of different things. And doing my PhD, I did a lot of different things as well. So I totally copy your style. Also not just studying. So to be honest, I saw many pitches, like when in my presentation I mentioned pitches, like when you introduce yourself. And I think as a PhD student, you should not say, I'm Riccardo, I work on stream reasoning. What I do, right? Riccardo, I do soccer 3 times a week. I like books about Philip K. Dick. Okay, that's what I like. And then how do I bring things in my day life to my work and vice versa? So how they enrich each other. You need to live life to be motivated in your PhD. If you stop it because you need to work too much, and I know everyone here I'm sure works 12 hours a day. So it's sounds like a contradiction, but you need to find your own balance and you need to live life, love it. Then the motivation won't run off because you have something, something, you know, awaits home. That's for me at least.
Mm-hmm. So I think we can take maybe 2-3 more questions. One there is about the postdoc life. Some people think it's an essential part of PhD students. If we can comment on that. So maybe about the postdoc, maybe I can comment a little bit that postdoc is something that happens after the PhD. And it's essential only if you're interested in an academic career, if you're interested in becoming a professor at university at some point. Then yes, then postdoc is essential. But if not, postdoc is not needed. It's the part that comes after the PhD. But if you later on want to go to industry, you don't need a postdoc. For many things, you don't need a postdoc. Only if you are interested in pursuing an academic career later on. And still, the postdoc is a nice time. And typically, you can do it abroad, and then you get to learn other topics. As Jack said in the chat, it's an opportunity also to shift topics after the PhD. It's a great opportunity that after you have grown up as a researcher and as a person with all the skills that you grow during the PhD, it's a great opportunity to deploy those, to use those in another field, perhaps, or changing a little bit the topic from your PhD and do it in another lab, in another country sometimes, and it's another growth period. But it's not essential. It's not a part of the PhD. It's a part that comes after. And it's only important if you are interested in an academic career.
Yes, and maybe I would like to also comment that the time for the postdoc varies. I think in computer science is typically, I mean, I did 1 year postdoc, which I think is considered relatively short. Typically, I think it's 2 to 3 years, but I think there are other areas where most of the research is done by people in postdoc who might be in postdoc for 5, 6, 7 years, but that's not how it works in computer science, I've understood. But
I agree. I didn't do one. I just came here right away after, and I think for me, the thing I have to consider was postdoc position is somehow privileged in the sense you have much less teaching commitment. So you shouldn't. My suggestion, because as I skipped to get the position, don't skip postdoc if you don't think you stay in academia, because you need to. If you are still deciding, which is a good compromise in my opinion, because there are some opportunity to change field, broaden a bit, do research with less pressure, because just enjoying without the thesis, monkey on your shoulder. But the teaching is definitely different. So I love teaching. For me, it's awesome. So
you should talk.
Yeah, we should talk. But I think you should not skip postdoc if you're not sure that academia is your fit. For me, I don't think they will hire me anywhere else. So no, I'm joking. But I think that's for me was an important point in the decision.
Okay, so maybe
that question doesn't understand. So it's
yes, I think it's the last question is about if no topic or supervisor yet, then not much to do at the moment.
What do you mean?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what is meant, but perhaps maybe if it's related to the fact that, if I don't have a topic or a supervisor yet, what can I do? Or no need to worry. I think that's an important part of this event also, that as I mentioned also in my talk, at some point, the supervisors will have to apply for PhD projects. And the first deadline is 13th of December, so in 10 days. So for those of you interested in being associated with one supervisor for next academic year already, and even if not next academic year, if you are first year master student, it's not a bad idea to get to know the potential supervisors sooner rather than later, because then you build this link, you start doing some research, and that helps a lot for later on when conducting an application for a PhD position. You have that link already built, you know that you're compatible with your supervisor, you know you get along together, you like the topic. It's better to reach this link sooner rather than later.
Yeah, there's this saying that social aspect is important before as after. Hang out. We love to talk about what we do. So just ask, come along. Can we in my group, the data system group, we have a stand-up meeting every Monday at 4. Now it's remote, but
Still standing?
Still standing. Yeah, we force everyone to stand. Actually, we should do that. But so just, the Zoom link is public. Just join in, and everyone pitches 3 minutes conversation. What I did this week. That's a perfect way to get, the sense of what we do. And there are also a lot of memes usually because the students like to, mess up. But then, so I think hanging out is the best way to understand who you want to work with. Not just my lab, just spin around, do small projects, ask PhD students if they need help. They will subordinate you stuff to do, and you get up to speed at a certain point.
And I think with that advice to socialize, to annoy us, to ask questions, to comment and bother us sometimes, to hang out, to know better potential supervisors and projects. I think with that advice, maybe we can perhaps conclude. And just to say goodbye, I would like to remark finally that perhaps some of you will be here next year as a PhD student. Some of you maybe will be somewhere else, conducting your PhD student in another country, in another cities. But I hope that this event will serve you as to provide you the elements and information for you to take this important decision. And other than that, I would like to thank all the speakers for sharing their experiences, Annie and others for the organization, and all of you at home for being there and participating. I hope it was a nice event and informative, especially.
And you for chairing and
Asking us.
And asking us great questions.
We love presenting. I love it. So thank you. And
thank you very much, Raul.
Thank you very much.